Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino. On this episode, we talk with author, intuitive death doula, and channeler guiding souls, Helen Gretchen Jones. She writes about shared death experiences and the essence of spiritual consciousness. Her writing focuses on fostering loving connections with oneself and others, and her work emphasizes trusting personal experiences and the teachings she channels from her team in spirit known as the A-Team. Helen holds a dual master's degree in art history and theology from St. Edward's University. She is also certified in sound bowl therapy, Reiki, hypnosis, and past life regressions. Beyond her role as a death doula, Helen serves as an intuitive guide delivering messages from spirit. It's quite a story. Enjoy.
Well, I'm interested in getting into your work and your history, and to begin that journey, I want to know one of the more momentous things that affected everybody in all of our works and lives has been the pandemic. And 4 years ago, it was raging. We didn't know where it was going and how we were going to get out of it. How did you survive that time period, and how did it affect the way that you do your business and live your life now?
Well, actually, that's a really good question. At the time, I was practicing as a death doula, and I had many patients and clients that I was working with in nursing homes. And when the pandemic happened, we weren't allowed to go visit our patients. A few of my patients were too, immobile or weak to reach the phone, so I couldn't even have phone calls with them. And that was really hard for me and for my patients. But I did a lot of Zoom work, which I'm sure you did as well, and video calls with families who, when they would go and visit from outside windows, would put their computers up so that we could connect with our clients and patients. So that was one way in which we got around it. One of my patients, though, Mr. A, I call him, he actually survived through the pandemic. He was on hospice care, and he was on hospice care for 5 years. So I was able to meet up with him after COVID and continue right where we had left off. So that was, he was one of my favorite clients. And even to this day, a lot of my life-changing experiences happened through our 5-year journey together.
Yeah, that was quite a magnanimous time. And I'm curious, if to get to the heart and soul of what you do on a daily basis, I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third-grade students, and it's career day. And one of the kids is curious and says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer that child?
Part of the message that I'd like to share is to normalize discussions around death. But, of course, if I'm in front of a third-grade child, I would limit the details of that conversation to some. So, to some degree. Like, some kids have different religious beliefs in their family, and I certainly wouldn't want to go against any of those. I would explain that at some point, everyone transitions, everyone dies, and they may already have had a family member or a grandparent that has already died. And I would explain that I sit with people before they die, maybe when they're sick or not feeling well, and I help them come to terms with some of their regrets, some of their grief, some of their joys in life that they would like to talk about and even relive in those moments. And we help them find peace through their final days so that when they do transition, they're transitioning with a full heart and with as much closure as possible.
And I'm sure a lot of kids would understand that, because everybody, even at that age, has probably gone through some level of loss. And I'm curious, is it kind of more of a uniquely American thing to have this weird cloud over leaving the planet? Because it seems like in other cultures, it's a little bit more acceptable and embraced.
Yes. So it has been my experience as well that to not want to discuss death or to find it to be unlucky or taboo or, no, we don't want to talk about that. And even when we're sick, we're fighting diseases. We're always trying to battle anything to keep death at bay. And I do find that to be a very Western cultural way that we've all been brought up. I would like to change that. I think that death is something that's important to talk about. It affects every single person on this planet, not just person, but being, animal, plant. It's all around us all the time, and it isn't taboo or unlucky or we shouldn't be talking about it. I think just the opposite. I think the more we talk about it, the more we release any sort of fear around it or any sort of connotation that it's the worst possible thing that could ever possibly happen. We have all these big ideas around what death is, and instead of people don't know how to react around it. They sometimes avoid people who have recently lost someone because they don't know what to say, or when someone gets sick with a terminal illness, they avoid them, again, because they don't know how to react or what to say. And so the more we talk about it and we're brought up in a culture where we can talk about it, the more we can actually form those stronger connections and assist people through one of the most momentous moments of their life, which is transitioning. So I am a big advocate for talking about death and normalizing it in our Western society.
And you see both sides of it, and I think that's the thing. There's this fear of what's going to happen and how, what's going to happen afterwards. And you obviously, having this spiritual intuition, you get the chance to see both sides. So I would think your amalgamation of making people comfortable and being able to kind of see the other side would bring some level of comfort to people that may be ambiguous about what happens or even ambivalent about what happens afterwards.
Yes, and I find it to be very beneficial in what I do, because even people who are, it goes against their belief in any way, whenever they are diagnosed with a terminal illness, they start to consider more things they hadn't allowed themselves to consider before. They start to think about, okay, well, maybe I'll listen to the idea that there could be something more, because in their mind, they're also a little fearful of what if this is the final goodbye? What if this is it? So they become a little bit more open to thinking about maybe there is life after death. So with the ability to see or speak with spirit, it has been helpful in being able to bring through a little bit of evidence and a little bit of hope before they enter the actively dying phase. Although it has been my experience that once a patient enters the actively dying phase, they themselves start to remove, the veil or whatever is comfortable for people. They start to see themselves in two worlds at once, and they start to see beings of light and angels. So they don't need me at that point. They're starting to experience it on their own, in my experience. So it's really the part leading up to the actively dying phase where people are scared and they're fearful. They're not just fearful of, am I going to be in pain? But they start to think about, will I ever see my loved ones again? And it's during that time that I find that I can be most beneficial.
So I'm curious, when you were in the third grade, what did you want to be when you grew up? What was your dream?
A teacher. I wanted to be a teacher. I'm not a teacher, although I am actually. When I sit and talk to people about these things, I am teaching. So I'm not in a classroom, but I would say the world is my classroom, and I absolutely do teach and try to share messages around comfort and connection and love. Absolutely. I do that every day.
Yeah, you certainly do. So I'm curious, take me back to where you were born and raised, and how are these seeds of getting people comfortable with going to the other side and even having that clairvoyance to see the other side of things that most of us don't? How did all of these kind of get harvested and grow, evolved into who you are today?
Well, I've always had the ability to connect with spirit, and my family, my dad was atheist, my mom was whatever she wanted to be at that time. We weren't raised in a very religious background, but we certainly weren't raised spiritual either. My grandmother was a Seventh-day Adventist, so we had all these different influences. But I even remember when I would get stressed or overwhelmed with something, we're, kindergarten, I would go sit in an empty bathtub and just be quiet, be still. And that was meditation, but at the time, my whole family didn't know meditation. We didn't practice that. That was just something that I did naturally. And I did see spirit, and I did hear from spirit. And when I would share that with my family, they would say things like, oh, we believe that's, that you believe you heard that, or, that's your imagination, or that's a dream, or something like that. But it didn't make me question the validity of my experience. It made me question, because the experiences were so transformative and validating most of the time, it made me question my parents' ability. Could I trust them with their wisdom? Because if they didn't believe in any of the stuff that was happening and being validated for me, it made me kind of build a wall with them, because I couldn't fully trust everything that they said because they didn't understand what I was experiencing. So I've never questioned it on my side. But as I got older, I did. I wanted stronger proof. I wanted stronger evidence, and so I've been doing that now for the last 20 years. After I became an adult, I wanted to be absolutely sure before I started sharing these things publicly, these experiences.
So I'm curious, what was the first moment where you knew that you had this clairvoyance, or you had this ability to see things that most people couldn't? Do you remember the moment, the day?
I do. I remember where I didn't question it anymore, because I'd had the experiences before that. But I actually had a being of light appear above my bed, not very far above my bed, just 3 feet above my bed or so, at the foot of my bed when I was 12 years old. And that being of light, I still can see him in my mind's eye even now. He was so loving, and I felt so safe and protected, and it felt so natural. I didn't question that there was a man in my room or something like that. It just was. And he glowed light from within, and it just kind of lit up or illuminated my room. It was the middle of the night. My room was totally dark. And so it was at that moment that I thought, okay, so sometimes the voice can look like a person. It can be a being as well. And it was one of the most beautiful, comforting, protective feelings I have ever had. And this feeling of just unconditional love. No matter what I did or what I said, everything was always going to be okay. And that was sort of a starting moment for me.
So who's been a hero for you? Who's been an inspiration for you, not only in the work that you do, but just the life you've led?
Well, that's a really good question, because I feel like I've taken moments from a lot of different people in my life that have offered, a pillar of strength that I look for. I think I like that my mother's ability to continue to grow and mature, even as she is dealt a lot of challenges that she struggles to move through sometimes. My grandparents were always a solid foundation, and my grandfather's patience. My husband, his ability to be open and move through anything I throw at him with such peace. So my daughter, who observes in such a way that she is wise beyond her years. And my son, he is so non-judgmental that he can look at anybody, and he's just a light. So I think I take moments and pieces of people that I just really, really value, and try to remember that in my own challenges.
So is there anybody alive on the planet right now that you find fascinating, interesting, or someone that would you feel like it would be beneficial to meet and talk to? Is there someone out there that you would love to meet?
Well, if I kind of have this idea that when I'm supposed to meet someone, they arrive. The world is filled with teachers and inspirers, and so I think the person I would like to meet is someone I don't even know exists yet, someone who is going to present themselves in the right moment when I'm supposed to meet them, and they're going to shift my perspective. I think that trying to see the world through other people's points of view, giving us a greater understanding, strengthens our connections to each other as a whole collective. So I think the person I'm supposed to meet could be the next person I meet on the street, So I'm excited to always meet someone new and listen to their stories.
I love that answer. So let me ask you this. With what you do, you're dealing with heavy situations all the time. And no matter how good you are at this, you still have to dole out a lot of yourself and your soul. But you also have to hold back to evolve as a human being. What is that gumption? What is that drive every day for you to wake up, to do this work, and to continually be who you are on this planet?
It is heavy a lot of the times, and with every single patient that I'm with, I cry. I have my own release. I'm not, I always think I need to be, initially when I started the work, I was like, I need to be the rock. I need to be the strong person in the room. While I could be capable of that, I just authentically, if I want to release my feelings, I do. And I have found that by doing that, people feel like I am understanding more, I am connecting more. And so I don't want to be something I'm not. I've learned that through this work. So if I feel the need to let go and cry a little, I let go and cry a little. And then people find understanding and can relate to that. I find, too, that the reason I want to get up and do this work every single day is because I learn so much from the people who are transitioning, from their families, and the more I learn, the more I understand different people's points of view. Not what I would do different, not if I were in their shoes, I think they should do this. No, none of that. But just feeling what they're going through makes me feel more and more connected to each and every individual. And the more I realize we aren't as separate as we all think we are.
So what's been one of the more, of all of the clients that you've been with and all the situations you've been in, what was one that made you grow the most? Maybe the gravity of it, or what it did for you afterwards to help you be stronger in your role. Was there a moment like that? Was there a client?
A couple of them, yes. Mr. A, which was the patient I mentioned during COVID, I was worried I would not be there for his, final breath. And at the time, I was still I had this misconception that the final breath was an important time to be there for your loved one. And my team in spirit came through, and they gave me a lesson on the final breath is not the most important part of a loved one's journey towards death. It's the years, months, weeks, and even days leading up to it, and that you don't have to be there for the final breath. The final breath is just the body's way of finally letting go, but oftentimes the spirit is already standing outside of the body. It's sort of like our body is a vehicle, and we step into it and drive it around for a little while, and some people take it fast, and some people take it slow. Some people just run it into the ground, and other people take it in for maintenance. But when it starts to finally putter out, we don't have to stay in the car till the very end. We can hop out of our vehicle and watch it coast to a stop. And it has been my experience that many of my patients do that before their final breath is actually before it's that final exhale, they are actually already observing their body from the spirit form standing outside. So when spirit was sort of letting me experience this through several of my patients, it started with Mr. A, though, and they also told me that I could leave a love letter. And a love letter is, for me, because I'm very visual, is something I create in my mind. For example, with Mr. A, I knew that he loved waterfalls. So in my mind, I envisioned a waterfall and the most lush, gorgeous landscape that I thought he would love. And I just infused it with all this love that I had for him. And I said this, in my mind, I'm thinking, this is for you, Mr. A, that when you transition, you receive this love letter from me, this visual experience with all this love that I have for you. And so now I do that. I give love letters in my mind to everyone in my family, to accidents I pass on the side of the road, to a bicyclist who looks like he's struggling up that hill. I send him a little love letter. I send people love letters all the time, and that was a lesson from my team in spirit. So I think that's mostly it. I think it's it's Mr. A. It's learning that you don't have to be there for the final breath. I wasn't there for my grandfather's final breath. I was able to do it from home because time and space does not matter on a soul level. And so I think that's probably the biggest takeaway.
So at the end of the day, of everything that you've accomplished and done and become in your life, what are you ultimately the proudest of?
I think I'm ultimately the proudest that I keep going, that I'm constantly evolving, that I keep learning something new, and I allow those new things to shape my perspectives, and that I don't allow myself to stop. I just keep going, and I hope that will influence my children and the lives that I touch, that, you know, your beliefs can change, your experiences shape what you believe, and nothing is for sure. Like, Spirit would tell me one thing, and I would be like, okay, so that's the truth. And then Spirit would say, not so fast. That was like the top layer. Now let's go down a little deeper. So I think my willingness to continually learn and grow and change my perspectives based on my experience is probably what I'm most proud of.
So what's the best advice you've ever gotten in your line of work or in general? What's the best advice that you've ever had?
Okay, I'm going to say it's the Beatles song, Let It Be. Let it be. Because I have a tendency to impulsively want to jump in and fix something or to shift something or change something. And I think it's a nice reminder to just sit back and let it go. I don't have to try to control everything. I don't have to fix anything. So just let it be.
You know, I got to say, it's interesting. I've thought about this more and more, and I didn't think I would get to this point in my life. I don't tend to be the kind of person that ceremoniously through my life goes through the dread of 30s and the 40s and all of that. But I'm 51, and recently I've had this weird sensation, like when I wake up in the morning or like in the middle of the night, and I'll just have this very fresh sensation because my brain's just kind of floating, of just kind of being a little bit sad because I know that the sun is setting after 50 and you're heading towards the second half of your life, that I'm really going to miss being on this planet. And it's a really weird, complex feeling. And I know it has to do with me leaving this planet. Is that kind of a natural thing? And how do people deal with those kinds of feelings?
So it is a natural feeling for people who love life, for people who are making the most of what they can while they're here. I also get the other side where some people can't wait to go. But I think how you deal with those feelings is exactly what you've been doing. What can you do to live it up while you're here? What is it that you've always wanted to do? But more importantly, what is it that you always wanted to say and you felt like you couldn't? What is it that you've always wanted to, who is it that you've always wanted to connect with and you have felt like they have a wall up? I think being vulnerable and being your authentic self eases those feelings that, oh, I'm not ready to leave, or, oh, that resistance, you know, that I'm going to miss it so much. But when you allow yourself to fully be vulnerable and authentic, regardless of what someone else is how they're going to respond, you start to realize, wow, I'm doing it. I'm living exactly how I'm putting everything on the table. And so when your time comes, and it will, because death comes for the young, the old, the healthy, and the sick, you have left everything out exactly, nothing unsaid. You know, you won't regret ever saying something with love to anybody, even if it's like uncomfortable for that person to receive and hear that.
What a great answer. I love that. So let me ask you this. If you have a dream tonight, you ran into an 18-year-old version of you, and you could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've led, the wisdom you've gained, what advice would you impart on that young version of you?
Oh, that's easy. I would say don't worry about what other people think. I went through a phase, which I think is natural, by the way. In childhood, for your own survival, you have to worry about what your family thinks, what your society thinks, what your culture thinks in order for you to move through it. You learn how to judge and you learn discernment early on, and then you alter your behavior so that you can continue to be accepted because you need to be for your own survival. And then as you move into early adulthood, that sort of is still in you. You're still thinking, how can I fit in? You stop yourself from doing something. Oh no, they wouldn't like that, or oh no, and so you hold back and you don't allow yourself to just be you in that moment. And so if my young adult self would listen, I don't know, I probably needed to move through that personally to find my voice and to find myself. But if they would listen, and if I could just give them a head start, go ahead, just be you. Don't care what other people think about you, but be you in love and in kindness and in joy, and don't let other people's hurt or pain or feelings of inadequacy shape how you live your life.
So at the end of the day, everyone out there has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, everyone that you know. But ultimately, you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I'm an eternal student. I teach, but I'm also a student. I am constantly learning and growing from everyone that I meet, every connection that I make, and from my own team in spirit, who are always suggesting new perspectives. And so I hope that I'm always a student moving forward.
Helen, this has been wonderful. What a vitally important and uplifting job that you do. I know that, there's a lot of fear enshrouded around it. We all have. But the fact that you're walking into this world and helping people find the next one, what a vitally good, important role that you're doing. So thank you for opening up. Thank you for your work. And if anyone wants to reach out and hire you, learn more about you, anything, the good business, where can they go?
They can go to my website, HelenGretchenJones.com, and I'll be happy to respond to any emails or messages that come through. But I really appreciate being on your show, and thank you so much for using your voice to share other people's stories. It's so important to allow other people to hear different points of view and perspectives.
Absolutely. It's the best kind of therapy that we can get involved with down here, that's for sure. So, thank you again. I appreciate it. Best of luck with everything.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, literature, business, spirituality, music, and more from around the globe. Our esteemed theme music was composed and produced by the great E.E. Pointer of Kansas City's River Cow Orchestra. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on YouTube. You can also find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.